We've just got some absolutely massive news with the end of the Siege of Terra series. Myself and probably you thought that this was going to be a two-part series, the End in the Death Part 1, the End in the Death Part 2. But Games Workshop, Black Library, Dan Abner have just put out a brand new article over on the Warhammer community website. It is an interview announcing that it's going to be a three-part series, 3 books, ending the Siege of Terra series, literally ending the Horus Heresy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through this interview now. I'm going to read it. I'm going to give my thoughts. Hopefully you give me your thoughts. And we can just discuss everything that is about to go down. So let's jump in and let's get waffling. So let's jump into the article, and I'm going to put it on this screen over here so we can all see it, we can all read it together. I'm going to go to the main points. You can see like the 3 big books right now. By the way, book 2 comes out this year. I think it's in November, so by the end of this year, we should know how the fight with Sanguinius and Horus goes down, because in this article, it explains what each book is more or less about and how they wanted to write the lore for each of the books. So it starts this epic culmination of an enormous amount of work, exclaims Abner, is I hope everything everybody wants to see in order to do justice to the momentous point in the lore. I don't think you can please everyone. I've always said this. There's always going to be certain aspects where people think, oh, I wish they didn't do that, or I wish they did this instead, and other people love it, some people hate it. At the end of the day, you just have to write the best story you can write, and hopefully the majority of the people will enjoy that lore. That's the way I always go into it, and the way I actually see it. It's to be published into sections simply because mechanically we can't print books that big. Dan Abner can write a big book. And you know what? I know a lot of people will complain about them splitting it into 3 parts. You know, it's all about the money, which I definitely do see. You know, they want to milk this for as much as possible. But hear me out on this point. This is Dan Abner. This is by far the greatest writer that Black Library, Games Workshop, Warhammer 40,000, Warhammer 30,000 has ever got. So for me, for him to write another book dedicated to Primarchs, the Emperor, Sanguinius, Dawn, Horus, Abaddon, the Siege of Terra itself, I see that as an absolute win. I'm a massive fan of Dan Abner, so just to have another book from his viewpoint, his writing, is always going to be just fantastic for me. But I understand if people do see this as like, oh, they're just milking it as much as they bloody can. It says a lot of threads from Volume 1 do arc over into Volume 3. It's very much paying off the things that have happened before. Now, the really interesting things are at the bottom of the article. It says, it took me 2 years to write the whole thing. It's literally the biggest thing I've ever done, the most formidable challenge, because there's so much expectation attached to it. I loved it. I was almost sorry when it was over, and there's nothing left to write, but I had a good long lie down afterwards. I bet you did. Now we're just waiting for the the final Beckwin book, Dan. Pandemonium. Wonder what's going to happen in that. So what is it all about? In the final hours of the siege, a confrontation between the Emperor and Horus, which is the immense, and it's obviously about the fallout and other major events that are going on at the same time. In the end of the Heresy era and its beginning of something new, which is basically the scouring for people who don't know. That's what happens after the Siege of Terra. It's the Loyalist forces coming together and actually pushing the enemy back into the Eye of Terror. There's a sense of history pivoting for the most dramatic sense, and a lot of very important things to come. Yeah, but it's there's a lot of things, a lot of big things. Like the Imperium, what it is today, is shaped after the events of the Horus Heresy, the Siege of Terra. It's no longer the Emperor leading humanity. It's the bureaucracy. It's politics. It's in some sense the Primarchs themselves actually leading humanity without their father figure telling them what to do for the first time in their lives. It goes on to say, but many of your questions will be answered and many more will be posed. This is a snapshot of what really happened, where the myth grew from, what the myth is to become probably, and the most important to Warhammer, what became to believe 10,000 years later, as I just mentioned. This is the moment of being there as a ground zero and seeing these things as they actually play out in numerous perspectives. It almost tells you too many versions. So we may see a different side of things. Now here, this is what I'm on about where it gets really, really spicy. So Volume 2, meanwhile, will soon be hitting the bookshelves. Now Volume 2, like I said, will be coming out by the end of this year. The centerpiece of Part 2 is Sanguinius versus Horus. So that's basically what Book 2 is about. That epic duel that we've all been waiting for, with Horus casting down Sanguinius, or as some people have speculated, maybe Sanguinius actually cast down Horus and it's Sanguinius that does the damage to the Emperor. You know, it's all these kind of fan theories that are out there. And that's a very different in every respect to the centerpiece of Part 3, which is Horus versus the Emperor. Now, again, that probably ruins that other point I've just mentioned, but you know, they're not going to say Sanguinius versus the Emperor, are they? I know it's still out there, but basically what they're saying is Part 2 there's going to be Sanguinius versus Horus, and then the Book 3 is literally going to be the Emperor versus Horus. My only critique on that, probably just butchered that word, is how can you have Sanguinius in just what, like, how long is this fight going to be? Like, you know, Dan writes these thick books, right? Surely we could have had the Emperor in that book as well, but obviously they're splitting it all apart. I'm just wondering, like, how drawn out is the fight going to be? If you've read the previous book, you know, when Sanguinius fought Angron at the Siege of Terra, like, that was only like a chapter, and that was just epic enough. So I wonder what's really going to go into this book. So yes, we've got outlying stories with Valdor, Rogel Dawn, trapped wherever he is in the desert and stuff. So there is really, really interesting things that probably could go into Book 2 to really draw it out. But Book 3 now is something I'm absolutely really looking forward to. It actually goes down to mention some other characters as well. I was looking forward to returning characters of Loken, who obviously has got to be in it because he was there at the start. I am more or less convinced Loken will die at the Siege of Terra, sacrificing himself for the Emperor. That's the way I see it. John Grammaticus and, of course, the band of misfits that are doing their thing a part of the Siege of Terra. I don't want to go too much into it in case people don't want to be spoiled. But as ever is the case, when you're writing a character, you bond with them in a weird way. Of course, you know, if you've been writing these characters so long, of course, you're going to bond with them. It does mention Dawn and Valdor at the bottom, which I'm really interested in. Dawn and Valdor in a particular were vastly enjoyable. Sanguinius is not a character I've written much of, but I had fun with him. He's an extremely difficult character to write, and a challenge I really enjoyed, and weirdly found an enormous sympathy with Abaddon and the situation he finds himself in, where he's obviously completely committed to doing terrible things. This is the big thing with Abaddon. Abaddon wants to beat the Imperium in an honorable way during the Siege of Terra. He hates that the forces of chaos, demons, all these ungodly things are taking part at the Siege of Terra. He wants it to be an honorable warrior v warrior thing. Of course, that's probably going to descend into madness over the next 10,000 years because he's using chaos for fun now to do his things. But it's going to be interesting to see Horus lose his crown, to say, and then him picking up the crown, doing what he does with the Vengeful Spirit and leaving. Like the full Retribution fleet arriving, Gilliman, the Lion, Lehman Russ, Korax, you know, all these Primarchs, all their scattered legions, the Shattered Legions, the remnants of the Imperium coming through and finally hitting Terra, maybe having this massive bloody siege battle in space, and as all the traitor legions are literally retreating, you know, dragging Primarchs back on ships and stuff like that. It's absolutely going to be amazing. So, sorry if something just popped up there. I had my alerts on while I'm actually reading this. Yeah, I'm super looking forward to it. And I literally can't wait. There's a bunch of information down here, but basically just to get to the end of this, it's going to be 3 parts of this book now. As someone who's a massive fan of the Horus Heresy, of the Siege of Terra, I just can't wait. I literally can't wait to see what we get. And again, I understand if people are going to say, well, they're milking this. Of course they are, because it's their golden goose. The Horus Heresy, the Siege of Terra is their golden goose. I won't be surprised if we get more novellas, more books, certain areas, going back to like Isfahan to explain more short stories, more characters and stuff like that, because it literally does sell, because people love the Horus Heresy and the Siege of Terra. Anyway, that's enough waffling for me. I actually just been waffling for over 8 minutes now about this article. But let me know in the comment section what you feel about this. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you looking forward to it? For me, like I said, Dan Abner, it's a win-win. Absolute win-win. We'll get to see some epic showdowns, epic duels written in the best possible way. See ya. Have a great day, and bye-bye.